Today, we kick off Love and Relationship Week with a chat about what to do when you've lost that love and feeling for your financial advisor.
I'm very happy we have him back here in Mom's basement. It's about damn time. Chris Mamula's here. How are you, man?
Always happy to be in the basement.
We got 2 days until Valentine's Day. Great. We don't want to be with the wrong advisor on Valentine's Day. So we really have you here as a financial planner talking about, well, you know, you're on the other side of that. Maybe, Chris, like, what's the best way to break up? But before we get there, you had this awful story you told last time you were here about your parents. Tell that story again for people that didn't hear your last appearance, because your parents kind of had the prototypical person you don't want in your corner.
Yeah, well, let me go even a step further before my parents. Like, they actually, they were working with this advisor. And so me not knowing anything, getting out of school, and I kind of thought they seem to know what they're doing with their money. So I asked them, who they were using. So he became my advisor first. Oh. And so I broke up with him first, which actually caused a lot of rift. Well, not a lot of rift, but it caused some discomfort between my parents and I, because like this was like their guy and they trusted him. And like, so I'm going in there like, he's ripping us off and I'm not happy with him. So then like the next time they went in, they had to deal with that. But yeah, so I mean, he was, I would call him a salesman who presented himself as an advisor. Really just a lot of very expensive products, not really appropriate for their needs or ours then eventually. But yeah, that's kind of how we found him, is through them. And I think like that's just where a lot of people don't know where to start. And so they go to somebody who tends to be a friend or somebody they trust. And that's how they end up with their advisor. And that was my parents' case. And then through them, that was our case. So, yeah.
So you and I engrossed in this. I mean, we're steeped in it. We cover it every day. A lot of people listening aren't, and they don't know, like, what are the clues that person might not be the right person for you?
I mean, I would say I was that person. So I think that even though now I'm on the other side and I do financial planning, I only got into this, like I had basically zero interest, I would say, for the first decade of my career until I realized like what a bad deal we were getting. So that's kind of what sent me down this path of, first I started writing very critical of like financial advisors all suck and like nobody should use one, to like, I think this is why you had me on to do this, because you're the one that first kind of pointed out to me that I kind of became my parents' financial advisor, and a lot of people do need help. And I've come to realize from interacting with blog readers and readers of my book and people that I run to in public that, yeah, a lot of people do need help. So I think like the best place, in my opinion, to start is to really understand how your advisor gets paid. That does not guarantee you're going to get good advice by any means. But it does at least let you kind of see, it kind of, I think, illuminates some things of like why you're getting certain advice. So, I mean, basically the way I break it down is there's 3 ways you can get paid. The first is commissions. So that means somebody is getting paid by what they sell you. So that's like, if you're going to them, you're going to probably end up with some type of like whole life insurance, maybe an annuity, maybe loaded mutual funds, because that's how they're getting paid, is the product that they're putting you in.
And I think, Chris, it's easy to identify those people because they always seem to lead with the product that's the right fit. Right. Like you're going to a shoe salesman, they're like, oh, I like this one, versus I think where you're getting these other types of advisors don't start with that. I feel like those are the easiest ones to know. If they start with a product, it's probably going to be commission salesperson.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like it's the old analogy of like, if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So like if you sell whole life products, everybody that walks in looks like they need a whole life product. So,
they might.
So yeah, so that's kind of a clue. I think that's the worst, but unfortunately for most people who don't have a lot of net worth, that tends to be the only option traditionally that they've had. Because the second model then is assets under management. So you're charging some fee for your investments. I think it's less conflicted because they're not selling you something, so they don't have that incentive. But it's certainly still conflicted because they want you to have your assets under their management. So maybe you had a good retirement plan and they want you to roll it in. Maybe you're thinking about starting a business or buying a house, but they have more money if the money stays with them. So like if you're looking at like, should I pay cash or take a mortgage? There's only one way that benefits that advisor. So there's still a lot of conflicts. And also, 1% is kind of the standard fee. Some people are less, some people are actually more. And that sounds like a really small number. And I think that's why it's presented as 1%. But like typically they're not going to work with you unless you have at least $500,000 under that arrangement. So 1% of $500,000 is $5,000. If you have $1 million, that's 10,000 and up from there. So that number looks a lot bigger than 1%. So I think that's why you see it in percentages. And then what I advocate for and what I do is just called flat fee planning or advice only. And so where that differs is you're going to pay your advisor. You have to take out your checkbook or your credit card and you know what you're paying. And maybe you're doing like a one-time engagement to, have somebody look over your plan and give you feedback, or you have a change in life circumstance. Or a lot of people, and this is what my firm does, is like a subscription model where you pay a relatively low fee, even if you don't engage with the advisor at all that month. But over the course of the year, you know what you're paying, and it just kind of makes it easier for some people to work on cash flow.
It's all
you want to have somebody,
transparent.
right. So you know exactly what you're paying. And again, that doesn't guarantee good advice, but it does kind of eliminate a lot of the conflict. So it gives you, I think, a better fighting chance.
Yeah, I think when that fee-only advisor says, buy this product, and by the way, you're not going to be buying it through me, you're going to go get it yourself. Well, then, what's in it for them? Besides, maybe they've had lunch with the dude that, I don't know, that offers the thing. I do have a question about that, because I'm 100% on board, Chris, as you know. You and I have talked about this so damn much, which is why I wanted to get you on the microphone with this again, because we always have such fun conversations about it. But you've seen the studies and I've seen the studies, which show that while commission advice is easily the worst of the three, and while, to your point, with a fee-only advisor, it doesn't guarantee great advice, commission advice might be tangentially toward the goal, but has so many reasons why it can also keep you from the things that would get you there much faster. Commission advisors get the highest implementation rate, meaning if you're truly going to get something done, commission advisors get stuff done, even if it isn't going the direction you want to go. Fee-only advisors, time and time again, are at the bottom, where the advisor gives you this wonderful advice and you do nothing with it. How are you guys working to solve that problem? Because once we get by that issue and people actually do something with the advice, then it gets even better.
Yeah, I think that is the advantage, one of the advantages of if you're going to do like a subscription model versus the one-time plan. I think a lot of people want the one-time plan and they kind of balk a little bit. That's the one pushback we get whenever, like if I'm doing a prospect meeting, is people don't like that. And like, why am I paying if I'm not seeing you for a month? And it's that ongoing fee. But I do think that's the advantage, is you have somebody kind of holding you accountable, and you're going to come back. We're checking in with you our standard is kind of every 6 weeks, you're going to get some type of an email or something from us, just kind of check in how you're doing. So just knowing you have somebody kind of looking over your shoulder, I think that helps. Then the other advantage I also think that comes with this like kind of ongoing model is that, a lot of people, like, your circumstances change. So like a plan versus planning are two really different things. So like I just met with somebody very recently who was like kind of entering semi-retirement. And he said, he was planning on doing some consulting and he already had booked $40,000 for this year.
Wow.
I said, okay, well, that's good. And then he said, but I think I may make up to $300,000. I was like, well, that's quite a range. So like, if we do a one-time plan, like, that's quite a range. So that's very different outcomes. So, and you see that kind of stuff all the time. Somebody comes and they engage for a plan and they lose a job, or they have this illness, or, so things are always changing. So that's kind of the downside also, in addition to the implementation of the one-time plan. And again, nothing's perfect. Like, our model certainly isn't perfect. People still have to implement, but I think it's better, and that's why we chose that model.
No, I agree. I think that, there's no such thing as a perfect plan, but knowing where the Achilles heel is and where you can trip yourself up is a huge part of knowing anything you're getting into, because everything has a downside. What is, you're a guy that was highly skeptical of the industry. You're now in the industry. What has surprised you, but maybe good and bad, about the world of being a financial advisor?
I think the bad, again, I've been started from somebody that knew nothing about this other than my one personal experience, and I was a very harsh critic. And, it's been 10 years, and you hear about this advice only growing, and I thought maybe the advice out there isn't so bad. And the people that come to us for a second opinion who have advisors, it's still really bad. Like, we see some, people are just really bad products. Even people who, again, like the advice only people, there's just such a ridiculous amount of complexity that is totally unnecessary. And there's so much that's already complex in our system. Like, the tax code is ridiculously complex. Like, the idea that you can do a Roth, but only if you have up to the X dollar of income, But then if you go over that, you could still do a Roth, but you have to do the backdoor Roth. And like, there's so much stupid complexity that is unavoidable. So like, why add complexity like by having 15 different funds when you can do it with 3? Or why, like, you know, like there's just so much stuff that you see that's just unnecessary complexity. And I think, again, like that's one of the conflicts with some of these models is, and even with the advice only, like there's definitely a conflict to make things more complex than it needs to be, because that's your job security, like get people to keep taking their credit card or writing checks. So like we really try to simplify, but yeah, it blows my mind, some of the stuff that you see people coming from other advisors, and it's just unnecessary. So I would say that's the biggest negative surprise.
I am, and I'm so amazed by that. The fact that, I mean, it seems like such a contradiction that I am, as you know, Chris, so pro-advisor. You need good people. If you are a rock star, you need great people around you. But that word great, there's so many advisors. There are just so many bad ones. And yet you look at the number of people, Chris, that are retiring. Like, seriously, if any of our stackers want to go, this is a great bit. We need more financial advisors.
We need more good financial advisors. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
yeah,
yes,
for sure.
Good point. What surprised you on the upside? Like, how have you been able to change lives more than you thought you'd be able to?
It's pretty cool to, there's just a lot of things. A lot of it's on the behavioral side, I think, is where you can really have an impact. If you are, you know, stepping back, stepping away from product, you're simplifying the investments, and you're looking at those other things that you can focus on. Just being able to get people who are really good savers, and they're like, it's so hard for them to actually then spend. And you're kind of like giving them permission, and you're like, you know, like you're encouraging them to be able to go live the life they want to live. I think that's super cool. And then the other thing with our model, we do try to be relatively low fee. So we have some people that come in and they're just, I mean, their finances, frankly, they're a mess. And you could just kind of almost sense like the embarrassment and the stress and the anxiety that money produces. And so to just be able to step back and say, you know, like, okay, this is where you are coming from. This is where you were. But like, these are some actions we can take. And like, these are some couple small, like one-time actions that can have huge impact. Are you willing to do that or not? And then if so, we can make really dramatic changes. And then even if not, okay, like there's little things we could do to start, you know, taking baby steps to start working towards bigger change, and just seeing the impact and just seeing that kind of like stress melt away, and seeing this not become such a stressful thing where like they, like, it's not like going to see the dentist when they have a meeting with me, but now it's like actually something they look forward to is really super rewarding and cool. So yeah, that's been the biggest pleasant surprise.
That is super, and it is when you find that somebody's retired earlier because of you, or they got the vacation home. They were able to take more vacations. I had a client that was just able to decide she could take a little bit more time off work so she could go to the gym more often, which she wanted to do. Like that little thing, and the joy that she had because we thought differently about things was so super cool. All right, here is the question of the day. We got 2 days till Valentine's Day, and now you're on the other side, and it's time for you to say goodbye to that advisor. Do you ghost them? Do you call them? Do you, like, what would you want to see from a client if they said goodbye to you?
I would love to have an explanation of like what, you know, why they are leaving. Like, you know, are they not getting value? Like, did we do such a good job educating? They feel completely able to do it on their own, or are they feeling like we're just not meeting their needs? So from the advisor, I would say that I would like to have that feedback to help me to serve future clients better, so I'm not making the same mistake over and over.
Like an exit interview kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally love that. That being said, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of, again, just going back to where we started this interview with me starting with an advisor because it was a friend of my parents. And like when they eventually left him, then it was even more hard for them. You have to kind of do what you think is right. Like, I think that it's good to tell the advisor if you're comfortable, but if not, I mean, you don't ever have to talk to the advisor. You can move your money to a new firm, just tell them you want to transfer it. And I mean, you can do that, and that's certainly your prerogative. So you have to kind of decide like how you want to handle it, but it does make it very awkward because that's probably the bulk of the people that I see coming from old advisors that want a second opinion. It's, you know, the old college roommate, or it's somebody that worked with their parents and they inherited this money, or whatever the situation. And it's just very hard because of the personal relationship aspect.
It feels like an offshoot of this conversation, Chris, is frankly, don't hire friends and family.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like I written a blog post and I called it the worst financial advice I ever hear everywhere. And what that advice is all the time when you see like, how do I find a financial advisor? People say, you know, ask for a referral from somebody you trust, which is, again, exactly what I do with my parents. And the problem with that advice is most people don't know what the heck they're doing. So they don't know if they're getting bad advice. And now you're going in with your guard down because you totally trust this person because they're working with your parent or your best friend or your cousin or your neighbor or whoever. And then 10 years later, you wake up and you realize like how much opportunity cost and how many fees you've paid. And, you know, the difficulty now because you have surrender charges and tax complications to get out of your old investments. So yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, that's great advice, but we don't live in an ideal world. And we live in a world where, frankly, most people are pretty financially illiterate. And so, you know, they don't know what quality of advice they're getting. So I would be very cautious doing that.
Well, I like the advice you gave at the beginning, just breaking down how they're paid, and that'll give you some ideas as to whether they're a salesperson or not. I think there's a little bit of something you should probably ask also based on this, which is, and I hadn't thought about it this way until just now, Chris, was a little bit of a prenup before you get into any investments, meaning know what the contract is about getting out of the investment, because often, especially those commission salespeople, that investment's going to be tied to that advisor. And if there's an 8% fee to get out of it later, you're kind of married to that person, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah. And that was the first thing that we realized when our investment. So we started reading some things when I was starting to get serious. And as I was going through my old statement, one of the accounts said VA after it. And I didn't even know what VA meant. Like I was a physical therapist. I worked in the VA hospital at one point, and I was like, that's the only VA I knew.
Like, oh, this
and so as I started diving through, though, it was a variable annuity. And
we're helping veterans. Oh, no, we're not.
Yeah. So I was like, why do I have this? But yeah, I realized it was a variable annuity with, it was my wife, she changed jobs. So it was a rollover from her 403B. So it was in a tax advantage account where it really had no tax advantage, which is kind of the one reason maybe you'd want to consider that product, very rarely still, but didn't have that for us. And we didn't even know what we had. So we realized it was like 2% plus in fees every year. So we're like, we want to get out of this. But then we realized we had like an 8% or maybe more than that, because we had just gotten it like a year earlier. Didn't realize what we had like an 8% surrender charge to get out. And yeah, it was just a total mess. And that's kind of what sent me down this path of kind of becoming a consumer advocate and writing, and then eventually becoming a planner.
So if somebody's divorcing an assets under management advisor, my understanding is most of these are held at places like Charles Schwab or Fidelity. Is it possible during this divorce for me to leave the money at Fidelity, but call Fidelity, not my advisors, call Fidelity and say, I don't want this person as my advisor anymore. I'd like it to be just me. And then the 1% goes bye-bye and I can keep the funds?
What I always advise people is just to check your contract of, you know, when you sign that AUM agreement. It varies from advisor to advisor. So I think the best thing to do is just to check your contract and see what exactly you have to do as far as notification and how you break that arrangement.
Because that seems like a great way to break it too. You know, if I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving it to a different firm, like say you're with, you know, a certain brokerage and you want to move it to Vanguard or Fidelity, you can have Vanguard or Fidelity, just contact them, tell them you want to move the funds and they can do it there. But if you're staying if you want to just stay at the same firm, yeah, I would just check with your contract of what exactly you have to do to break that.
That answers a lot of people's questions. Frankly, you don't have to tell anybody anything, Chris. I mean, you could just go to Vanguard, say, hey, I want to do an IRA rollover of my IRA or a brokerage transfer, and fill out paperwork with them and tell your advisor nothing.
Yeah. And that's generally, again, if people are just struggling to have that conversation, that's what I advise they do. Again, from the advisor side of the table, I would personally like to have that explanation, but you don't owe them anything. Other than whatever it says in your contract to notify them so they know.
Yeah, I think you owe it to yourself to get where you feel more comfortable. The other place I think that I would caution people myself is, but only because I had this happen when somebody was divorcing me near the end, they took their money out of the IRA. You don't have to take your money out of the tax shelter to divorce your advisor. You don't have to remove money, maybe not even leave the fund that you're in. You might be able to keep the fund. So there can be a difference. This gentleman, it was during the 2007-2008 meltdown, Chris, and I was just about to stop being a financial advisor. In fact, what happened was the client actually heard that I was leaving. I had a meeting scheduled with him for 2 weeks. He freaked out the fact that I was leaving, didn't want to be assigned to somebody else or have his account go to somebody else. So he pulled his money out of his IRA. And I called him and I said, please don't do that. Like you just paid, I think it was $250,000. You're going to pay tax this year on $250,000 because you want to leave me. And he's like, well, you don't care. You're going away. I'm like, why am I on your phone calling you? Get rid of me. That's fine. I'm going away anyway. Get rid of our firm. Get rid of all that. But please, God, do not pay tax on $250,000.
Yeah, and that's like key details. Like we definitely tell people that. Like, so if you're in a tax advantage account, you're going to roll it over to a like kind of account, so there's no tax consequences. If you have taxable investments and you want to sell those all off, there's going to most likely be some kind of tax consequence if they went up in value. So again, just the new brokerage, you ask them to do an in-kind transfer so that all moves over. And then once you have the old investments where you want them, then you can, methodically and intentionally sell them off. But yeah, you got to be careful with that. That's a very good detail.
Well, the way, Chris, that, I like people to have good people in their corner. And if you're upgrading your advice, you don't think you're getting good advice and you're going to go to somebody like Chris Mamula or whoever, somebody that really I want to do business with, wait until you meet with Chris Mamula before you do. I would advise people that too, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Or, some people just decide they want to do it on their own. But I think like once you see the impact of fees, I think people get really upset and they want to make a rash move. And what I always explain to people is like a 1% fee compounded out over 20 or 30 years. I mean, that might be half of what you would have had that goes away in that fee. It's remarkable what the impact of compounding fees does. But 1% fee for 2 or 3 extra months is, in the grand scheme of things, maybe a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. And you want to kind of be intentional, go slow, make sure you know where you're going to and what you want to do. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to let your emotions get the best of you. And I think a lot of times that happens when people get to that point where they're ready for a breakup, just like with regular breakups.
I think that's a great place to leave it. That's fantastic advice. Get the plan right first. And I think of that extra fee, extra month or two, Chris, is just insurance, like an insurance policy, to make sure that you're not going to mess everything up. Well, thanks for helping us get out of bad relationships and hopefully forge better ones. Happy Valentine's Day, man.
Back at ya.